Right, welcome everybody to the first external overview and scrutiny panel. Go through the evacuation procedure. Fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once outside the building, please go to the opposite Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door which you have entered the room, or by the fire exits which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Please also make sure your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. I just need to advise you all as well that this is being recorded for future broadcasts. Apologies. Wendy.
Councillor Claire Golby, substitute Councillor Brock, Councillor Lydia Hocking, and substitute Councillor Bradley.
That's the only one, is it? Anybody got any others? Minutes. Can we confirm the minutes so that I can sign them? Is everybody okay with that? Does anybody want to move or I can sign the minutes?
Sorry, Chair, I can hardly hear with the noise outside. Can we close the windows a bit? I'm struggling to hear.
Yeah, if you want, yeah. If you really want.
I don't really want to. I can't hear.
You're going to make yourself popular.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's gone now, let's see.
Dave called for that at that time. Right, so minutes can confirm that the true record of what happened at the last public scrutiny panel. Is everybody okay if I sign these on? Yeah, move it. Yeah. Move. Declarations of interest. Has anybody got anything apart from what is on these? Damon?
Chair, the declaration of interest on page 12 for me as trustee of the Nuneaton Arts Council is no longer current. I stood down as from the trust and informed Phil Richardson before the mayor making, so I'm surprised to see this is still here.
Okay. Wendy, can we make sure that gets taken off, please?
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Excellent. Public consultation. We have nothing. So community safety performance.
Okay.
Rachel.
Hello everybody and welcome to new members. My name is Rachel Jackson. I'm the Communities Manager for the Borough Council, and I come here probably 3 or 4 times a year to update on performance in relation to community safety. Just introduce my colleague to the right.
Dave Williams, I'm the Safe Neighbours Inspector for Bedworth, Alison Coleshill. I'm standing in today for my boss, Chief Inspector Borough.
And then next to him is our Community Safety Officer.
Linda Stroke, Communities Officer at the Borough Council.
So we kind of work together closely as part of what's called Nuneaton and Bedworth Safer Communities Partnership. I don't know if you've heard of that. Are you familiar with NABSCOT? Yeah, okay. So NABSCOT, just to kind of put this report into context, NABSCOT is a statutory partnership that is led by the Borough Council. We've got a statutory duty under Section 17 of the Crime Disorder Act to have this partnership. We also have a duty as part of that partnership to do what's called an annual strategic assessment, and that strategic assessment determines what our priorities are for the coming year. So you will get kind of later on, around about February, March time of this financial year, you'll get an update in a closed session about what the crime disorder issues are for the borough, and you will be able to kind of influence and we'll be able to share what those priorities are as determined by the strategic assessment. So what you've got here within this report, it's the last quarter of 2017-18, so it's kind of looking at both the quarter of the last quarter up to March the 31st, but it also compares the end of that year with the previous year. And the priorities that you'll see here, so I'm looking at, if we look at this extra beautiful colour copy that I've circulated, the priorities that we've got are predominantly, we have three key priorities at Mascot. We have violent crime, which is broken down into different categories. We have acquisitive crime, which is broken down into different categories, and antisocial behaviour. So they're the three core areas of work that we do as a partnership. And then we also focus on other areas which aren't priorities, but they're areas of interest. And within that financial year, within the period of time we're going to look at in a moment, they were for vehicle crime, for hate crime, and for prevent. So prevent doesn't appear on here. Prevent is what we call preventing violent extremism, and that's picked up via kind of different partnership arrangements. So if we look at this report then, you'll see in the first table on the left-hand side, our priority categories, and I'll just take you through the kind of the darkened area at the top. You've got quarter 4, 16, 17 for these crime types, quarter 4, 17, 18. So there are then comparisons between those. That's the number difference that you'll see. You'll see percentage difference in the next column, and then finally the final column refers to the end of the financial year, and it's comparing that against the previous year's baseline. So here you'll see that for violence against the person and sexual offences, for quarter 4 in 17-18, there was 62 less compared to the previous quarter, which overall difference was minus 6%, so it was a reduction in that category by 6%. However, overall, because obviously in the earlier quarters of that year, the violent crime was higher, it was an overall increase of 5% when comparing it to the previous year's baseline. Similarly, if you move down to violence against the person with injury, you'll see there that the quarter against quarter there was a 15% reduction, and at the end of the financial year, comparing the baselines, there was a 2% reduction. Violence against the person with injury, there was an increase of 2% for the quarters, and an overall end of year increase by 11%. For rape, there was a 9% increase in the quarters and a 21% increase in the final quarter, comparing the against the baseline. And for other sexual offences, you'll see there that quarter against quarter, there was a 35% reduction and an overall end of year reduction of minus 14%. If we move on then to residential burglary, there are two categories that you'll see there that are acquisitive crime related. So residential burglary, for the quarter, there was an increase of 3%. An overall baseline, comparing against the baseline year, there was a 25% increase. You'll hear in a moment some more up-to-date police stats because domestic burglary residential has actually decreased in this past quarter that we're in now. For burglary business and community, you'll see that there was a 32% reduction in between the quarters, and at the end of the financial year there was a 25% reduction. Antisocial behaviour, quarter against quarter, there was a 12% reduction and an overall end of year reduction by 3%. Moving on to deliberate small fires, reduction of 46% against the quarters and an end of year reduction of 23%. And then total recorded crime, comparing the quarter against the quarter, there was a minus 9% reduction, but an overall increase at the end of the financial year of 8%. The table beneath that basically demonstrates the figures for each quarter, so you get more of a kind of quantitative understanding of what they look like. And if you move over to the right-hand side of the first page, you'll just see the different trend lines there. And for the first one, violence against the person and sexual offences, you can see it kind of peaked around April 2017 and has plateaued off and coming down slightly towards the end of the last financial year. Burglary categories are fairly kind of up and down trend there. And then for antisocial behaviour, we record antisocial behaviour in 3 categories. We have nuisance, we have personal, and we have environmental. So the different colours represent different lines for each of those categories. And you'll see there that the one of most interest for us is the pink line, which is the pink dotted line, and that relates to personal. And if you turn over the page, In terms of antisocial behaviour, it's the second table. I will go back up to the top table, but for antisocial behaviour, you'll see the different categories there, broken down in more detail. So overall, as we've said, we've had a reduction in antisocial behaviour. For nuisance, there was a one incident increase. So you'll see 2017-18, at the end of the year, there were 3,708 nuisance incidents recorded. For personal, you'll see there's been quite a significant decrease in personal incidents of antisocial behaviour. At the end of 16-17, we had 933 recorded, and at the end of 17-18, we had 768. For environmental, there's been a slight increase in environmental, and you'll see there the figure at the end of 16-17 was 451. Figure at the end of 17-18 was 534, and then overall you've got the figure. If we move back to the top table, what we're always interested in is the element of domestic abuse as part of the overall violent crime category. So this table here just seeks to demonstrate what those figures look like. And again, if I take you to the end columns, the end two columns of the table, for violence against the person with injury offences, there were 1,382 at the end of 17-18, of which 401 were domestic abuse related, and overall that represented 29% of the overall, 29% of all violent crimes. So that's around about a third. And then if we move down, if we skip out the one in the middle, if you go down to the bottom table, which is the other crime incident category, you'll just see there the kind of the watching brief that we have on vehicle crime and hate crime offences. Again, the table at the bottom in the left-hand corner, total recorded crime, just seeks to demonstrate that there have been 267 less crimes in Q4, whilst there has actually been an increase at the end of that year. So then if we move over to the final page, which is the page with lots of greens and reds, the information that you've got here basically separates down certain crime types and total offences by ward. And you'll see there, if I draw your attention to two parts really, Abbey Town, you'll see that there's been an increase in offences within Abbey Town. And what we do as a partnership, we kind of look at this and think, well, we need to find out a little bit more about what's happened there. We commission pieces of extra analysis from the Warwickshire Observatory, and we kind of work as partners to identify what we think might have been happening. So in terms of the increases there, we commissioned a separate piece of research for the Abbey Town, and predominantly the increase was related to shoplifting offences. Contrary to that, if you look beneath that, you've got Abbey North. And Abbey North in 2017, we had 332 total offences. However, at the same period in 2018, which is the end of March 2018, there's quite a significant reduction in the Abbey North area. We kind of think this is good news, but we want to, before we kind of sing and shout about it, we want to understand a little bit more about why that is there. We feel that it might be something to do with a recent police operation called Operation Farrell, but until the analysts have kind of worked their magic and kind of come up with some... Sorry. I didn't get your message, did I? Until the analysts have come up with their information, we're not able to kind of really say, well, we think it's because of definitely A, B and C. And then a bit further down, you'll see that for St Nicholas Ward, again, one of the areas that we've been looking at is that you'll see in 2017, at the end of the year, there were 85, and there's quite a big jump. For that area, it's unusual to see that kind of increase. So we've looked at what made those up, and what we understand is that they're related to violent crime incidents. Can't give you more detail other than that, but they relate to domestic abuse incidents. I think there are two separate incidents that have happened in those, or repeat incidents that have happened in those areas on one premise that we've been working to kind of identify how we can address what's going on there. And I just wanted to draw that to your attention because it's a really good way of us being able to, as partners, say, well, you know, that bit there looks great, what have we done? So we can learn about it and share it or actually that doesn't look right. What do what can we do? What do we need to implement as a consequence of that? So that's the end of the kind of the paper report and my update. Is there any questions that you would like to ask either three of us?
First of all, I think a lot of what we see there is kind of positive. It's nice to see a lot of greens. Been times in the past where it's kind of not so the case. I think the one that's going to be concerning to me and most of us will be the ones around burglary. So obviously it's great to see a decrease in commercial burglary, but we've got kind of the most identical increase in residential burglary. Just that might have obviously decreased in the last quarter, but just wanting to know if we kind of knew why that's the case, whether there is a direct link between those two, and whether we know why.
It's difficult to say, but what I can say in terms of burglary is, and as Rachel said, certainly in this quarter, the figures I've got just before I came here was in terms of residential burglary. If we look at April for Nuneaton, Bedworth, I can't split it, but for Nuneaton, Bedworth, we had 38 offences in the April, 46 in the May, so it went up. But in June we had 21, so nearly halved. It's fair to say we're working really hard. We've got a force operation that started last October, because we saw a spike in the burglaries around last October, and vehicle crime. So there's a force operation at the moment called Operation Geode. Our patrol officers, our offender management unit, which is made up of detectives and civilian investigators, along with SNT, are doing what we can, obviously working in partnership with Neighbourhood Watch, etc., crime prevention, road shows, etc. We're trying to do our best to get that down, and as you'll see, it's having a positive effect so far this year. Notwithstanding, we have got a lot of travelling criminals. The arrests that have been made over the last few weeks, and there's been some really good ones, we're finding that a lot of the offenders we are arresting are from Coventry and Birmingham area. So we are struggling in that. It's not that we can't share intelligence between us and those other forces, but actually it's very difficult for us to manage the offenders that are clearly being managed well on those other forces and pushing them onto us. And also, if you look at some of the areas that have had spikes, for example, Whitestone in Nuneaton, St Nicholas Park, affluent areas, quite easy to get to in terms of the A5, and actually South Warwickshire's had a lot worse than North Warwickshire, and again it's those affluent areas that are being attacked. And you've seen it on the news over the last few months. What we are getting a lot of is car key burglaries. So they're actually targeting houses that have got nice cars on the driveways. It's mainly been Mercedes, BMW and Audi. They are being stolen to order, and unfortunately, I don't know if any of you saw it on the news some time ago, but they actually showed two offenders walking up to a house. It was in the Birmingham area. But what you'll see is these cars are getting nicked to keyless, and they are buying basically a system from China online. You can get it for about £1,000. The first offender will go to the house, press a button. That then will find your keys. It takes all the whatever is on that memory to that system. He turns around to his mate who's stood by the car they want to steal. They then press buttons together. That gives the information from the key, and they're in and they're gone. And they can do that within about 10 seconds. Most of those cars, we're pretty sure, are ending up in ports, in containers, and they're going off to various parts of the world. So, you know, it's a national problem as well. But luckily, at the moment, we are seeing a downtrend. How long that lasts with the summer period coming up remains to be seen. I know our ACC had a big meeting, quarterly performance meeting with all the chief inspectors, superintendents yesterday, and I know they've been given some information of what we can be doing for the next 3 months and what we should be targeting. And clearly, burglary and vehicle crime, along with shoplifting and ASB, are very much on our radar.
Can I just add that there is something that residents can do to help themselves as well. We are advocating the purchase of the pouches that you put your car keys in, and it stops the radio waves or whatever rays go through to access your vehicle. So if you put them in there, Neighbourhood Watch at the moment selling them at a reduced price, so they can be purchased for a couple of pounds.
I think they're £2 or £2.50 or £3.50.
The other thing that's worthy of mention, if you hold your surgeries, people in your ward areas, is that there certainly happened, I know in Whitestone, quite a few of these burglaries are happening where you've got your patio door, especially at the rear, where they're actually snapping the handle. and that gets you in. Quite a lot of people now, and certainly non-victims, are changing their door handles for anti-snap. So that is one way of stopping your offenders getting in, and it has been a big modus operandi for us in the last 12 months. So anybody that can actually start to do that with their own properties, that really is helpful, because it's been one of those MOs that's been real prevalent, and we need to try and stop it. And we only do that through crime prevention advice. Obviously, it's the cost to the householder, but certainly it's better than having your house ransacked.
And again on that, can they get them through Neighbourhood Watch? I know that
What I can tell you is...
Church Farm was looking
Yeah, well, I was at the recent... I actually attend the Nuneaton Bedworth Neighbourhood Watch exec meetings, and I know there's a very healthy virtual Neighbourhood Watch that's sort of built up since December last year. It's got about 8,000 members now across Nuneaton Bedworth. Really, really good. And I know through speaking to Lee Hayward, who set that up, was that they actually found a local builder, I think, who lives in and around the Whitestone, St Nick's area, and he was quite happy to give discounts to people who are part of Neighbourhood Watch, and he's been really busy, so he's been changing a lot of locks lately. So yeah, it's only a positive thing to move forward to try and protect your own properties. Unfortunately, a lot of the MOs have been smashing windows, and there's not a lot you can do about that, unfortunately.
Keith?
Yeah, obviously different crimes go up and down, different weather, but the
Yes.
burglaries, it goes all through the season.
Yes.
In terms of trackers in cars, I know a lot of people on Facebook say that people steal cars and then park them somewhere
Yes.
to see if they've got a tracker on and then
Yes.
drive them off. So I don't know what you're doing with trackers, and also ANPR. I don't want to discuss ANPR locations here,
Yeah.
but it is something we need to get,
Yeah.
particularly where the new estates are, because you may say there's a lot of money went to St Nick's. A lot of the money is concentrated where there's some very expensive new houses. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it'd be good to...
Yeah, I know nationally, we certainly can't just do it as a force, but regionally and nationally, I know for a fact that police, in terms of regional crime units, they do talk to the car dealers and the people who make the trackers, etc. Notwithstanding, unfortunately, a lot of these people who are involved in car theft, they know what to look for. And unfortunately, they are starting to realise where they can find the trackers, and they are disabling them. So we're up against that as well. But that's down again to the car manufacturers to work with the people who do the trackers and come up with something new. Because, the Chinese don't help us. They're always coming up with new gizmos for the offenders to use, and they're easily accessible online, unfortunately.
Keith?
And just we never have cycle crime on here. I don't know which heading you put it under, but there's about 300 bicycles recorded as stolen every year.
Yeah. Well, funny enough.
Just in relation to that, the reason why it's not on here is because what you've got on here is priorities in Ascot, so it won't appear as a separate crime category on here. It will be included in total recorded crime, but it doesn't get disaggregated down any lower than that for cycle theft.
Well, we're on that now.
But yeah, if you've got some details, go for it.
This just came out of, as I say, the ACC's meeting yesterday. Certainly, we've got bicycle theft on our performance dashboard, so they are low figures, believe it or not. It's 12 recorded in April, 14 thefts of bikes recorded in May, and 13 in June. Now, whether there's a massive underreporting, I don't know. What we do know last year is we got a situation in Nuneaton town centre where they got that brazen that bicycle owners were actually connecting them to the stands, locking them, everything. The offenders were literally coming up and snapping them in front of everybody and riding off on them. So we did have an operation in the town, and it came back down because we just did high vis. But actually they are very low numbers. I think the main problem we had was the North Yorkshire and Hinkley College. But we've done a lot of work there to try and give it better cameras coverage and more crime prevention advice. And we've seen a decline in that college as well. So not high numbers, but yeah, clearly it does go on.
Because just to finish that, writing things down at low numbers is good news, but then when they do spike, like at the college, you can see there's an issue, and then
yeah,
but we do react.
But we do react. We did react to that. We were straight into the school. We did target hardening, so and that had a positive effect. So.
Okay. Damon first.
Councillor Sergeant was there first.
Okay.
What age group is this covering?
What, the report?
Yeah, the where the antisocial behaviour, so what age group do you go down to?
All ages.
So it's
All
all
ages.
ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously under 10 you're not criminally responsible, but as Rachel says, it's all age groups. You know, up to 18 and even young adult.
You get kind of owner occupiers. You get basically the information that's there is you name it. It's all age groups, all areas, and you see, you know, really things that you didn't necessarily think were ASB, but they are.
Sorry, I forgot to mention the cycle crime, by the way, down 31% from last year.
Cycling crime.
Yeah.
Okay, couple of points here. I mean, tempting is to see a direct correlation between the 25% decrease in commercial crime and a 25% increase in residential. Just to imagine that, oh, we're not getting away with shops now, with houses. You just look at the statistics and you can see that's not, you know, they're not connected in that way. It's just a coincidental numbering. What I'd like to see in this report is, so we've got, you know, these bullet points here, but there's no qualitative commentary that would make that, you know, obvious to us from reading this report. You're the guys that know what's happening. I would like to see some sort of qualitative commentary in that, please.
If I may, that's I mean, within the report I've said we'll be here to attend
Right.
to kind of answer questions and provide updates
Yeah.
on remedial actions.
Right.
So if we,
Okay, thank you. The sort of thing I'd like to see also is, because obviously you cover a wider area,
Yeah.
how does this area compare to those other areas? To give us some context, because we imagine that we're perhaps the worst of it, you know, where we are, and things are terrible,
Yeah.
or things are brilliant, but we don't know how it goes in the wider
I
region.
can certainly tell you, well, certainly South Warwickshire's feeling it a lot harder than
Yeah.
North Warwickshire at the moment, both on burglary and vehicle crime.
Yeah. Well, you talk about vehicle crime, but does that come into residential burglary on these
Well,
statistics?
the thing to point out here is, last year...
Or is that a separate category that's not reported on in these bullet points?
can I just
So we need someone to answer before we get any more questions. So do you want to answer?
So in terms of what you've got here, on acquisitive crime, underneath the, you know, the performance, the
Yeah.
first table there.
I can see that. I was looking at, you give us a summary here.
That's just, I've just kind of pulled out some key elements of it.
Okay. So we're not including car crime in the residential burglary offences? That's
No,
that's
they're
under
two-
vehicle
they're-
offences.
Okay, thank you.
What I should point out, sorry Rachel, what I should point out is you'll notice as well that when we talk about burglary residential, they're talking about the dwelling,
Yeah.
but actually last year the county rules were changed and it caused a bit of a problem for us, but we've sort of had to put it under business and community. So what you've got in there is, and you'll see a rise, but let's not forget, some of these burglaries are sheds,
Yeah.
and that's the category it goes in. So it used to be burglary other, so you could actually see burglary dwelling, burglary other. You could differentiate. Oh well, they must be sheds and a garage that's not connected to the house. So where you see dwelling, that is just the house.
Yeah.
So that could include an integral garage where you've got the door in the garage that goes straight to the house. That would be a burglary dwelling. They've had to now put sheds under the business and community. So when you see the rise in that, you, as Rachel said earlier, if you see that go red, you think, well, what's that about? It tempers it slightly because people sitting around the table think, oh, we've got a real problem here. Our businesses are really suffering. There's actually a shed. It's someone's shed. Whilst that's still a victim of crime, it sort of it eases the pain in that the businesses aren't starting to suffer. So we have to keep that in mind as well, that these figures include burglary, sheds. Don't know if that helps, but...
Yeah.
Does that answer everything you need to ask, Damon?
That's fine, thank you.
So can I just ask for a point of clarity? You know, when you were referring to comparisons to other districts,
Yeah.
are you asking for that within this
No,
report?
not at all,
in the view-
no.
it's okay.
But I would just like to see something in here that would explain it a bit more, in your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Because that means that instead of me just looking at this and thinking, if you give us some reasoning, like if I was preparing a report for a lawyer at work, I would state what the law is, apply the facts and draw conclusions from them, and they can agree with it or disagree.
Yeah.
Whereas I've just got some bald facts here.
Yeah, I understand.
If I may, Chair, I just want to look at pick up on some of the more sexual offence natures. And whilst it's good that we've got other sex offences seen a decrease, and quite a marked decrease, and worried about particularly the rise in rape, which to me would potentially be something would be that category up from other sexual offences.
Yeah,
Particularly it's gone up 21% on the baseline.
yeah, I can understand your concern there, but equally we have, whilst every one of those is a victim, quite a few of those will be domestic related, believe it or not. But there is the flip side, and this has been driven nationally as well, is that we are happy with that figure because actually a few years back we wouldn't have known about most of those. So actually we're trying to make sure that the victims report, and not necessarily to the police to begin with, because they've got the SARC and everything else, but actually whilst we want lower figures clearly, they're positive in that at least the victims are coming forward and they are reporting, and then there is real good safeguarding measures put around them. They're giving domestic abuse risk officers assigned directly to them. Lots of safeguarding around the person and their property, etc., etc. So whilst yes, you've seen a rise, that is mainly because of confidence in police and other agencies to deal positively with them.
So you're saying it's mostly coming from, it sounds like we were saying, mostly known offenders specifically.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Not many.
People that are known to the victim, I should say.
Yes.
And that are particularly domestic
Yes.
orientated.
Yeah, the majority are, believe it or not, domestic related. Some of them, the Home Office pushed all forces a couple of years ago to back record, convert, so they've been doing that in the background, so that's pushed the figures up as well, and that's a fair point that Rachel makes. But we have to see the positives of that. While we would like no victims whatsoever, the positive is that victims are coming forward and saying, I have been raped, and that can only be a good thing. Investigations are a lot better.
We did do a sexual violence campaign in February this year over it took in Valentine's Day midweek. I don't know if you saw or heard anything about it. It was out on social media through various agencies and on the council website, and the police were putting information out.
That was really good, that was. I think maybe have a push on that again.
We are looking at doing that again next February.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do that. We'll do the week again, but at the same time, the information that Linda put out into the public domain is still being shared.
Yeah.
So although it was done during Sexual Violence Week, which is like Valentine's Day and around there, we've still been kind of sharing those messages. So the work hasn't been lost just on that week. It's an ongoing thing.
We could share the evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, we've got an evaluation that was conducted as part of that, just to see how successful our campaign was, if you're
Share the
interested.
posters again, though, because they were good posters.
We will do that. I
Yeah.
can send you one evaluation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all for doing
Yes,
that.
I'm doing it was really good.
Yeah, we're looking at how we're going to roll out the Ask Angela campaign, which is where, at the moment, it was just in the town centre establishments, where if somebody's feeling uncomfortable with the person they're with, they can go to a member of staff, and a member of staff will know that they're feeling uncomfortable, and they can either call for a taxi and ensure that they get out without alerting, or, so it's a safe way of somebody going to our staff and exiting the building if they need to. So we'd like to roll that out worldwide, but that's work in progress at the moment.
If I may, just to reiterate and reinforce what David said in relation to the reporting of sexual offences, although it is disturbing, you look and you think, wow, that's really not good. On the same kind of token, it's good that people are coming forward and feeling able to report, and that is something that's being mirrored across the country. You know, if you obviously on the news, there's been lots of sexual offenders kind of taken to justice, and it's about increasing public confidence in the services that that they will listen to them and they will take action, and there are agencies that are there to support people. So I understand what you're saying. It's like, that's crazy, but at the same time, there are agencies in place to kind of deal with.
Yeah, there's every chance you see those types of figures were there the year before, the year before that, and the Jimmy Savile investigation really opened it up, and there's so many people come forward, male and female, But as I said, I mean, I sit in the office with detective inspectors, and part of their role is to do constant rate reviews on the investigation to make sure everything was covered. And you tend to find a lot of them are unfortunately domestic related, so parties were or were not in a relationship, and you know, the offenders come back and thinks that they can do what they like when clearly they can't.
I think it would be helpful to know at some point as well, and perhaps this can be something in the future, is actually whether we're seeing, whether we could have some statistics relating to the prosecution level, and actually whether we're having a prosecution level that matches the rising reporting. Because it's all well and good getting a rising reporting of this sort of crime, and you say perhaps this is one of the few crimes you want to see going up, because it means perhaps more people feel comfortable to report it. But then it would be good to know and see that we are on the other side, which perhaps is not necessarily your responsibility, but more on the CPS, that actually where we're getting a rise in reporting, we are starting to get rising conviction rates.
I think for Warwickshire, well, I know certainly from North Warwickshire, I wouldn't say that's possibly the case. One, because of the historical nature, but also we have a lot of victims still reporting. Once they're reported, they then fail to follow it through for whatever reason. And there's sort of barriers that have to be removed over time, I guess. But or people have to understand as well, there's a forensic window that we have to capture all the evidence within. And if you go sort of more than a week, we're in trouble. And you've got a scenario then where the victim is saying, I said no. We will go and arrest the offender every time. We get a named offender, they are arrested pretty much as soon as possible. And they'll say, no, they consented. Who's going to tell us either way? And that's where we need the physical evidence. And if we haven't got it, we have no chance of taking that to court, unfortunately. So I'm guessing at the moment, but I wouldn't have said it's gone greater that way just yet. Nationally, may well have, but I don't think, certainly I wouldn't have said in this force if it's gone up slightly great, but I wouldn't have thought it's gone up too high, unfortunately.
So perhaps something on the public awareness that we're doing as a borough, we could actually look at not just encouragement of reporting, but encouragement of early reporting.
Well, I think a lot of that happens in fairness as well with the other agencies, and like you've got SARC, and it's still at Georgian Hospital, and other charities as well. They do an unbelievable amount of work, and they're really, really at the forefront of doing that.
The SARC has the ability to preserve evidence and store it. If the victim doesn't want to proceed, then I don't know what the time frame is there, but they can do that, and then when the victim feels ready, then they can.
Yeah, there's lots of education going out there. One of the main ones being early report, but also don't shower and don't wash your clothes. You know, all that type of stuff. Don't wash your, you know, whatever the scene is, if it happens to be in a house, you know, don't wash the bed linen. All that education has definitely gone out there, and through women's refuges and etc. etc. So, but it'll continue. It's a bit like telling people not to leave property in your car.
Yeah.
It's a continuous cycle.
Okay, Patricia?
Thanks, Chair. On the last table, where the vehicle crime is, could you break down the last one, the hate offences and crime incidents?
Yeah.
And does that reflect a national pattern?
Yeah, so you're looking at the second page then, the third table down, and then if you look at the total to date, so in breaking it down, you'll see then, at the end of 16-17, there were 206 hate crime offences, compared to 277 at the end of the kind of 2017-18. In terms of that, it does reflect a national increase in hate crime reporting and recording. And it's a bit similar to what we're saying about sexual violence. It's actually good. It's not good that these crimes have happened, but it's good that these people are coming forward and reporting them to us. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of that, and if you know, in relation to interventions that take place there, we have a county-wide hate crime group that look at a range of interventions to address hate crime, and then locally we have what's called the hate incident partnership. It's a partnership between ourselves, the police, and representatives from community organisations. And what we do is we look at the statistics for Nuneaton, Bedworth, North Warwickshire and Rugby alongside each of that, and highlight where there are areas that we could have kind of made things a little bit responded a bit better, or the police could have responded, sorry to say,
No.
where the police could have responded a bit better, or look at kind of ways and means to address particular areas. So for example, if you've got a location where you may have an increase in hate crime, what we've been doing is we've been going to those locations, and I'm thinking public, like fast food outlets, we've been actually going and visiting them and discussing with them what's been going on around their hate crime, asking them to put mechanisms in place, and then publicising where people can actually go to report incidents if they wish. So
This might be an opportune time to mention the conference in October that the Hate Crime County-wide group are pulling together. It's a big event, and we're hoping to get a good turnout from Nuneaton and Bedworth. This is the first time that we've had this sort of thing in the northern area rather than down south, so that's quite good. There's speakers such as Sylvia Lancaster. Her daughter Sophie was murdered a few years ago, basically by a group of youths that were, it was just for her way she was dressing, she was a goth. So that's very, if you haven't heard Sylvia, it's worth going just to hear it. So we'd like to promote this and try and get as many people to attend as possible. And it's also to show what's been done throughout the year. So it could be a good conference.
if there aren't enough to go around, what I will do is I can send you all the link to the details if that would help.
Well, no, we get it out on our comms.
We've already, it should be going in, I think it's in touch, there is the poster going in touch. And it is, we've got that in hand, that's that in hand.
Right.
Just to add, if I can, Chair, to what Rachel Lind said, in terms of hate crime, I also meet regularly with the Independent Advisory Group for Nuneaton and Bedworth, and we actually select a number of hate crimes that are randomly selected by me, and the panel then go through those hate crimes and we talk through the investigation. If there's any learning for our officers, that's my job to take that away, or they'll tell me, yes, I'm happy with that, that's a really good investigation. So we do scrutinise the hate crimes, and also in the last 12 months, the Superintendent Dave Gardner, he has actually put that level of extra service in where he's put 2 dedicated teams together, and it's now across the force where we've got 2 separate teams. We've got a victim management unit and a high harm intervention team. The high harm intervention team is like an investigation hub where if we get offenders in for hate crime or serious violence, they will dip in and deal with the offenders. And the VMU, the victim management unit, they then support the victim as best they can, so they give that extra level of service. And it's working really well at the moment. So again, we're trying to help people who are victims of the various hate crimes that are out there.
Right. Okay, is it actually on this report? Because
Yes,
what we're being, just to remind people that members are to note the performance report and acknowledge the remedial actions. So I just don't want it going off on everybody's ward.
Can you ask a bit of clarification on violence against a person without injury? Because that's the area of the category that's gone up significantly.
Yeah.
Could you briefly give us a bit of clarification on that, please?
Yeah, go on.
Again, you'll find that, believe it or not, it was common assault. So you can actually have a common assault that's no injury at all. So that could be a push, a slap. In fact, it can be when someone's come to hit you and missed you. That gets reported, they try to hit me, we'll put that down as a common assault. Again, they're various. When we looked into them recently, a lot of them were, again, domestic related and not much part of a partner, but family related. So, because domestics include the whole family, and that can include your relatives as well. So, a lot of that was that, and we found a lot of them were school students as well.
Malicious comments as well.
Yeah, and malicious comments. So, they capture a lot, and that's why, you know, again, good reporting. They're very hard to reduce, they are, because how do you combat someone's arguments in their own house or in a street or on a bus or in a vehicle? We only find out about it most of the time when people actually come to us and tell us it's happened. So yeah, difficult one. But again, as Rachel's said earlier on, if we see a drastic increase in a particular area, so a particular ward area, we would ask Inside Services to just go into the analysis. I recently did it at North Warwickshire because I said Addison and Colesall's mine as well. And actually it was pretty much 80% were actually within household, and the others happened on like a school bus or outside of school premises, and they're very, very difficult to stop.
Okay. Right, the only things I was difficult on the rain one, because I asked that on the last one.
Yeah.
So I thought you could explain that one. Right. What sort of things are happening with prolific offenders? Because I know we've got one out around Stockford at the minute, and it's causing havoc at the managed park.
You mean prolific events in all crime times?
Yeah,
Bristol?
because well, there's one where.
They should be.
Oh, well, I thought it was managed a little bit.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
We,
Yeah.
we get
Because that can have a massive impact
Huge.
on this.
Yeah, of
so
course.
just for your knowledge and everything else, there's something called the Integrated Offender Management Programme within Warwickshire. In fact, I think it's national. Within Warwickshire, we work again. We're members of a board that look at local offender management kind of elements. So the prolific and priority offenders are there's a small number of them. Nuneaton Bedworth just have the highest amount within the county, unfortunately, but relatively speaking, there's a smaller number of them, and they're managed within a scheme. So they're managed under, I think it's catch and convict, prevent and deter, and resettle and rehabilitate, I think. So you're looking at probably offenders around about 88. Does that bad? You look at about 88 offenders that are stringently managed by a team of people who are experts in managing offender behaviour. So some of those that are out in the community are managed by offender managers.
They have a specific owner. So for those that go to Mac House, for example, they get a visit. The day they arrive, visited by the owner. There's a few guidelines. Of course, they'll usually have to go and see probation, etc., etc. And it depends on what measures they've got when they come out of generally prison.
Yeah.
Some are on licence, some are not. Some are on curfew, some are not. But we actively look at those on a daily basis. Some go a little bit AWOL, and they're the ones that are harder to catch.
There's this couple that's causing a major problem, and then when it got out, it didn't seem good.
We also implemented the Buddy electronic tagging system last September, so that's still in its infancy. It's a voluntary tag, but it has been proven to show that someone on a tag who was perhaps suspected of being somewhere, it actually showed that they weren't. So they were excluded from that investigation, which meant the officers could focus on other avenues. So it's useful to exclude them as well as find out where they're not supposed to be.
The only other one really is for members is reminding everybody that it is hot weather, that is when crime is up. Small fires at the minute is looking good. We've got school holidays coming up, hot weather, so just remind your communities that not to leave things by the cars, in the cars, near the windows, near the doors. Lock the cars up and report every crime really.
And if you can, then put your bin somewhere that they can't be seen.
Can't go over the fences.
You'd love to set the bins alight for some reason.
Yeah. So everybody's happy with the performance report and acknowledge the remedial actions. And we can let you through that. Okay? Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda then, Coventry and Warwickshire Let Growth Report. Chris, up to you.
Thanks, Chair. So the overview of Scrutiny panel is asked to consider the following. So note the engagements and business assists within the update there are appendices, which hopefully you have seen. Note the planning activities that grow up for the next year, and thirdly refer any comments to the Cabinet on the 5th of September this year. I'm here as an officer role to answer any technical questions and to provide any clarity and to answer any other questions that you have. We've got Phil Peake next door to me, who's the Strategic Account Manager for the Coventry and Warwickshire Growth Hub, and then next to him is Gary Tyson, who is the Account Manager for Nuneaton and Bedworth from the Coventry and Warwickshire Growth Hub. So we'll hear. They'll be running through the spreadsheet that you have in front of you. Secondly, they'll run through the business plan for the growth of the next year, and then thirdly, we'll look at the video at the end discussing the business festival for Coventry and Warwickshire. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary. I'm your account manager for Coventry and Warwickshire Growth Hub. I'm not sure if many of you know quite how the Growth Hub works or how it's formed, so forgive me if I'm telling you stuff you already know. Yeah, okay. So formed in 2014 by Local Enterprise Partnership. There are there's 38 growth hubs across the country, of which Coventry and Warwickshire is one. And our sole aim is to connect local businesses across the region with support, business support that's available to them. Now, that could be anything from gaining finance through banks, or grant funding, it could be legal support, it could be HR issues, planning, property, anything that a business might face, or a barrier to growth that a business might face. It's our role to try and connect them with assistance and support that may help them develop the business and overcome those barriers. I joined the Growth Hub in November 2017. Gosh, so yeah, I'm 8 months in. One thing that I will combat first and foremost is that I appreciate Nuneaton and Bedworth have had a number of account managers over the past years. Whilst unfortunate, I'm committed and dedicated to helping develop businesses in the region. Nuneaton and Bedworth as my patch. You've had the data in the pack that you were given by Wendy prior to the meeting. I'll focus, I think, just on the bit in yellow. Hopefully it's fairly self-explanatory in terms of the explanations at the bottom of the chart. The first column being engagements, and that's exactly what it says on the tin.
Sorry, that's page 22 on your agenda. If you comment on that,
Apologies. So yeah, an engagement between the Growth Hub and a company across Nuneaton or Bedworth. Primarily it's ones where we've proactively engaged with businesses in the region. It also includes businesses that have searched and come across the Growth Hub, or have been referred through partners or other businesses in the area. You can see there's 133 over the last period, April 2017 through to March of this year. A growth plan is any development or approach to addressing a barrier to growth, be it a grant application, for example, of which out of those 133 presently there are 50. That number of those 133 may well increase. 21 grant applications as a result of those engagements, totaling 388,000 in grant value. Some of the grants have job creation attached to them as part of their eligibility criteria, and there have been or are plans to recruit 72 people as a result of those grants being awarded. Overall predicted jobs, including other support that we've provided within those engagements, is 185, and I'll leave the other figures to your digestion. In terms of a business plan, I've done a very sort of brief document purely to just highlight that I'm aware of the objectives that the council has set, and I want to work in line with those in terms of my operations and the growth of Nuneaton and Bedworth. And my aims and strategy are simply those 6 bullet points that you see. I've spent the last 8 months trying to build relationships, and I think I've done that with Chris. We're gaining some traction in terms of our exposure across the area. I spend a minimum of 1 day a week working from the town hall with Chris, and I expect that to continue. I'm frequently in the borough, the remaining days of the week where I have engagements or meetings with businesses in the area. Moving to events, which is part of that business plan. We have an event, in fact it's tomorrow morning, at Ambleside Social Club. If any of you wish to attend, you're more than welcome to join. We have 112 registered attendees tomorrow, where we can showcase successes from my predecessors and from my time in my post, as well as key business people, and of course our new leader Julie and Ian, who's will join us for part of that event. Finally, we have the Coventry and Warwickshire Business Festival. We saw the first event running the last 2 weeks of November in 2017. That was around about the time I joined, so I was involved with a few of those events. And we're looking to increase the number of events that are being held within Nuneaton and Bedworth, and we strongly encourage anybody who wishes to hold an event to register and get in touch with us if they're not sure what they need to do. By all means, contact a member of the Growth Hub to discuss that, or Chris, of course. Chris can help and point you in the right direction. I have a video that I sent over to Wendy, and if we can get that going, it's just an overview of the festival and what it entails, a bit of a taster for the event that's running this year again, the last 2 weeks of November.
We can do that now, yeah.
If you wish, yeah.
We've thought in Coventry and Warwickshire for a long time now that we've got some wonderful assets. So we've come up with the Coventry and Warwickshire Business Festival to give us a platform to drive economic growth.
And the Business Festival is a great opportunity both to look at what's already going on, but also the opportunities of the future.
I think there's a bit more confidence about the place. People are seeing development, like the building we're standing in here at Friegate. They're seeing the universities investing. Warwick University, I know, invests £3 million per week into construction.
Well, we're working very hard to make sure that lots of businesses do come to Coventry. We're working with big companies like Jaguar and Land Rover, are going through a massive investment process at the moment.
We're seeing Coventry alone as a city ranked 7th across the whole of the UK in terms of successful inward investment.
You know, the local economy is really important to us. It's much easier for us to help local companies than companies further away.
So Coventry and Warwickshire is in a good place. We're making a lot of progress, and the Business Festival is a chance for businesses to share knowledge and to develop plans for the future, so that Coventry and Warwickshire remains really at the forefront of growth going forward.
Coventry and Warwickshire Business Festival is absolutely crucial to business in Coventry and Warwickshire because it's all about connecting people up.
The biggest business event ever to take place in Coventry and Warwickshire. We're delighted with the response of the business community in pulling this festival together.
Can I just suggest that the video isn't normally that jumpy, it is very professionally done, and it's probably, have a look at it on YouTube if you want to see it in its full glory, because it is very well produced and done from that quite showcases it how it is. Yeah.
There's also some statistics, I believe, that are also supplied. I'm not entirely sure if they were in the main pack, but they were bullet point statistics of those sort of numbers of attendees, where they were based in Coventry and Warwickshire, which events they went to. If anyone's interested in that, if you haven't got it, search for it. Any questions?
Any questions on what's been said so far? Keith?
When this growth hub started after 2 years, we'd had 2 account managers. We're now on about 5. And it has been very disappointing that we haven't had that consistency that some of the other areas have had. So it's good to hear you're hoping to stay. In terms of your spreadsheet, we never get a spreadsheet with the other districts on. I know 2 years ago I looked and Stratford had got £20 million investment against our 1 and a bit million. So can we have an update as how we're doing compared to the other?
Right, Keith. Are we asking questions on what's been said so far?
Yeah, on the table presented to us today, I would like to know how we compare to the other districts.
Philip hasn't been yet, so we don't know what he's going to say. On what's been said so far, are there any questions?
On the table on page 22, I'd like to know how we compare to the rest of Warwickshire.
I don't have the statistics with me. We prefer to focus on each area, because each area economically is different, there's different activities. If you look at the stats, I think what it does show, Gary's been on board 8 months, it's had an enormous impact, he's been incredibly active. And if you look at the stats compared to previous years, the activity in this region, the impact in this region is better than it's ever been. Let's focus on what's happening in this region and what you want as a council from this region. We're working extremely hard. Gary's working hard locally and working hard in terms of what's initiatives taken through from government and industrial strategy launched last year, what that means to this region, what opportunities that presents to that region. Gary's the focal point for this team. It was a team of 12 people behind Gary working on it. And I think the field has demonstrated.
Gary, can you just explain how you get to know these businesses, how you go and knock on the doors and things?
Absolutely.
Like that. And also explain that this is on Twitter, we can share it, I have shared growth before through Twitter. So just explain a few of them little things, because some members of them as well.
Sure. Okay, in terms of how we engage, predominantly it's proactive contact via our existing database. So we conducted, it was prior to my starting with the growth, that there was a piece of work that was done to identify businesses within all of Coventry and Warwickshire, and I've taken Nuneaton, Bedworth, and I'm taking a modular approach to contacting some of those periodically rather than everybody all in one go. We have done it all in one go, but you never know what kind of response you're going to get, and there's only me. So what I need to do is manage that the best way so that it uses my resources effectively and also meets the expectations of those people we're trying to support. Just taking a step back, I did, in my preparations for the meeting, because I wasn't quite sure what to expect, I've never been to something like this before. I believe you asked the question the last time to my predecessor, Gareth, and his answer were, you're not comparing apples to apples. And I think in comparing Stratford with the Nuneaton and Bedworth, you're not looking at 2 animals that are the same. In addition to that, I'm not overly interested in what happens in Stratford, that's Phil's job. My focus is on the development of businesses within Nuneaton and Bedworth, and I'll continue to try and do that as best as I can. So I hope that goes some way in answering your question.
I probably just one comment to add. The point about all these activities over the years is it's net additional work. We're adding bandwidth to what you as a council engage with businesses. Stats, I've looked at the stats for the last year right across the region, it's comparable. Over 2/3 of businesses re-engage, never engaged with the council or public sector support before. So we're actually receiving support and therefore actually facilitating growth. It would not have happened without the work of the growth. And that's in a flat budget. I mean, the budget that we have for that financial year is exactly the same as the year before and the year before that. Nothing's increased, but we're increasing the effectiveness of it.
And just to point out as well, is if we know of any businesses where they could have the growth that could have, and I'll send to Hermes, because I wanted to get Hermes where there was when they went to Coventry. Rugby, sorry. So it's part of our job as well. Aidan, would you like?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to table Appendix A on 22. I just want to look specifically at the grants, some of the details about the grants there.
Sure.
I see, obviously, when the details that we have in front of us go far back to 14 to 15. I see between that, over that period, there was a slight dip, but we've come to the current, or the end of the last financial year, we had almost double the number of of grants actually granted to businesses, but the value of those is still lower than they were back in 14 to 15. Just wondering, we seem to be looking at smaller projects. Have we narrowed focus? Have we perhaps not wanting to do bigger projects as much as we were then?
The main reason for that, back in 2014-15, there was a variety of European and local funds available, and the average grant size was approaching £100,000 for capital investments. There simply isn't the volume of money around in European funded schemes locally. A maximum grant size, capital grant size now seen in the cross-country Warwickshire is about £40,000, and the average is somewhere near 20. So it's not a question of less activity, it's just that there's less money around in terms of grant money out there.
It might be better to focus on the number of grant applications submitted as opposed to the value of those. Not all of the grants that are awarded or that are asked for are of enormous numbers. You know, a grant of £2,000 or £3,000 might give a business what it needs to do address that particular barrier of growth. And we have companies that we're working for, two very locally, that are one's £2,000 and one's £50,000. The projects are differ enormously, but still mean a lot to the individual businesses themselves. So I would focus on the number of grant applications as opposed to the value of them.
One point to add to that is we are feeding back to government because obviously European funding has about 2 to 3 years life left in it because of the way the European budget cycle works. The government is preparing something called the UK Shared Prosperity Fund on that. And we as a lab and as a region are feeding back into that what we believe businesses should do deem from that. How that can impact that money can impact on it.
Keith?
In terms of your events in November, it was very, very quiet in the last year. How much better? Have you got any sort of key pull or venue this time to actually get a bit more activity in the borough? Because looking at comparators, and I actually did look at the calendar last year, there wasn't very much going on locally, and that is a great opportunity.
In terms of the number of businesses in the region that were running events last year, bearing in mind it was our first event, I think we've gained a little traction. It's open across Coventry and Warwickshire for businesses to apply to hold events, and we will encourage that and advertise and push and promote the business festival as strongly as we can. It's then also down to the businesses to want to run events and be part of that festival, even if it's not just as a guest. Hopefully they would look to run events if they have a key offering potentially. In terms of the main pool, it's still under development. We have frequent meetings with the team to put together the actual plan for this year's event, which I believe is a meeting next week with the team within the Growth Hub to put together a main event. More will come. I don't have an answer for you in terms of what it will look like at this particular point.
I think another point is the festival is we're creating a framework for businesses and people to involve themselves in. We don't create the events. The events are created by businesses out there, and one of the characteristics last year was that it was a fairly late start to the planning of the festival. It wasn't signed off by the board until, from memory, about June last year. So there's only about 5 months running into the festival itself. Despite that, there was actually 114 events put on. This year there's been a more relaxed run into it. There's already something like 25 events already registered. And new applications coming in every week. And the focus this year is not so much about the number of events, it's about the quality of those events, the impact, and maximising the number of people in each event. And one of the characteristics that's last year, for example, was that we might have 70, 80, 100 people registered for an event, and we might go 20-30% about on the day. Try and get people there on the day. I think the success of the festival last year was very visible events. I think that is starting to feed through this environment that people want to involve in.
It could also be
will help to actually get
a
the word
business
out.
big enough within the borough to hold an event as well.
There's two sides to this. One is the venues
Yeah.
and one is the events.
Yeah.
We had events last year put on by one-person businesses.
And not to forget, Gary's on his own going around knocking on these doors. But it could be as simple as somebody like came in last week, wanted the mayor to visit their 50th birthday. From there, we'd have explained that they can have help getting an apprenticeship and things like that. And that's how simple it can be. So we need to spread the word as well. June?
Thanks, Chair. Having been a member of the LEP for an amount of time, I've attended some of these business events across Warwickshire, effectively, and in Coventry. And I also recall going to an event that was specifically for youngsters, for school leavers, where the businesses there were encouraging them to attend, and they really are good. We do have quite a large lump of employment land in the proposed borough plan for Nuneaton, which I'm hoping we will get new investors wanting to come into the borough in that. But really what I wanted to say, because I think the Local Enterprise Partnership and the Growth Hub are of actual vital importance to Nuneaton and Bedworth and what they can do for us. There are several new members on this council. I've counted up, there are 7 of them here on this committee. Might it be an idea if there could be some form of, I'll use the word training, for people like Gary and Phil, come and explain to our members exactly what the Local Enterprise Partnership does, what the Growth Hub means to us, rather than just having the select few of us who have heard what's been said today. Might it be useful if we could have some sort of training event where every member of this council had the opportunity to hear the benefits that we could get?
Could you arrange that?
Yeah,
I think it would be worth linking the LEP as well.
Yes, absolutely. We were invited to do a similar session with the Stratford Council, as the area I personally work in. I don't know when it was, I think it was about February this year. The LEP presented and then the Growth presented. It was just like a forum and all the members were invited. And it was an interesting event. And I think it was cross-learning both ways. It wasn't just a one-way discussion. So yeah, I think we're valid.
I would move that course of action if it's a possibility.
Seconder?
Seconder.
Okay. Everybody happy with that? Some training? Wendy, can you work that out, work the date out or something?
I'm not suggesting it's going to happen tomorrow, you know.
Oh, no.
It's going to take
If you
time.
come to Ambleside Social Club, you'll have a good start.
But on the jerky side of that, what time is that? Because it said Ambleside.
It's 7:30 in the morning, running till 10.
7:30 till 10?
Yeah.
If you are interested in coming though, we've got as Gary said, we've got over 100 people booked on.
Right.
So please let us know because we're bursting at the seams. So just let us know when we can.
There's only so many vacant buttons.
There's only so many, yeah. And me and Gary need about 4 each, so we're trying to.
Yeah, okay. Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just noting the increase in grants applications, things we think is really welcome, but clearly from a very low base level. Do we agree it's from a low base level? I'd just like to ask, Gary, what do you think that what obstacles do you see, if any, within this council that are preventing you from expanding this even faster and further than it's going now? If so, can you let us know what you think they are?
The main one is the availability of the money itself. It's not just pushed by growth hubs, it's pushed by the programme managers themselves. So for example, Coventry City Council have a number of grant funding pots, ERDF funding. We're coming to the end of a 3-year programme across a number of their offerings. The money's run out. Hopefully it will be available again with a fresh programme as of January. But there's going to be a period between, I would suggest, if not before October and December, where there'll be very few grant applications, if any. coming from anywhere across Coventry and Warwickshire, purely because the money's run out. If it starts again in January, you'll see a spike again. So what might be an idea is that I can perhaps give you an indication next time we meet of maybe a trend across the year as to how those grant applications are, or when those grant applications are made. It might give you indications to, plus I've been here a bit longer and I can give you at least a whole year's data. That will be the main one. The second one I think is our exposure. We're pushing the growth up as much as we can without trying to make a nuisance of ourselves in terms of all the other noise that happens in the business community. Often we're faced with the what's in it for you. There's some scepticism in terms of why are you doing this for free, when simply it's to boost the economy. And it's not often when you don't often get to combat that in conversation. People make their minds up sometimes because of all the other commercial businesses that are trying to do the same thing yet take a cut from a grant, which is not what we do. So they're two immediate ones I can think of.
But they're not really internal. I'm trying to get, are there any internal structures, anything you feel prevent you from giving and getting the best that you can get?
I don't think I've been in the post long enough to be able to answer that well enough for you. What we've done, Chris and I met with Julie and Ian last week to try and forge new relations with the council leadership, and that got off to a good start, and hopefully that will continue.
Perhaps I'm going to sort of chip in there from a constructive perspective. We did the session, we were just talking about having a session, like an awareness session around the Lebanon Road. And as I said earlier, there's one of Gary, and I know obviously his expenses and his shoe level. I mean, he's the busiest guy of our team, I can promise you that. So he's very active out there, but there's only one of them altogether. The councillors, you tell me how many councillors there are, you know your wards, you know your people, your local communities, help us spread the word. All we can do is add value to your business community. So anything you can do to bring people to us, we'll do the rest. You know, that's our job, is to actually engage people with the right support and the right growth at the right time. That's what we do. Thank you.
Okay, so do you want to move on to your bit now, Phil? Or is
no, that's really, I mean, it's
Phil's really here,
you're in support.
I suppose there's one sort of comment to add. Part of my role, as Gary says, my role has slightly changed. I'm still working in Stratford, but I have a strategic role as well. And part of that is working closely with the BEAS, which is Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy Department of Government. They launched a new industrial strategy last November. That is still starting to flow out what that actually means. They're talking about new grand challenges, so things like aging society, future mobility, artificial intelligence. There's a number of challenges the government sees for the future, and how the money is devolved through to the business community is actually addressing those challenges. So part of my work is to unravel that with these and understand what that actually means and how it applies out into local communities. It's taking time, so but you'll start to see evidence of that, and maybe that's something we can bring to the awareness session that we're going to do it whenever that's arranged, to work about that.
So Chris, can you perhaps work on pushing the information out through our comms again?
I think maybe to go back to the previous point, I didn't know if able to not necessarily defend myself, but offer some examples of what we have done. By all means, we work with the comms team very closely, and as I said, Gary's here every week, so we do have a good relationship. One of the little things that we've done is with the planning weekly list that everybody receives. One of the things that's worked very well is that Gary's now on that list to receive information when a new planning application comes in, and if there's any application that suggests a change of use or something like that, he will go out to that business and
we've had some
talk to them.
We've had some good results
We've
from
had some
that
very good
already,
results,
including a referral from a piece of work we did based off that list.
Yeah.
So it really is valuable.
So it's very simple things that you probably don't think of, but they really make sense once you've done it. And by putting people onto the weekly list or the information that we hand out and on a daily, weekly, whatever it is basis, we're really starting to talk to more businesses. There's only so much I can do as an officer in the council, and I think it's right that by suggesting that you guys know your patch, by you guys going out and talking to your businesses and your things and suggesting, talk to the Growth Hub. They're here to help. We're, you know, like I said, Gary's here. I'm working at the Growth Hub occasionally just to get an ear onto the ground. So there's lots of things that we are doing to really showcase that they're available.
Is there a time span? So is it new businesses that are coming in, or is it businesses that have been here for 20 years and just need some help?
Any businesses that are experiencing a barrier to growth is the main way of looking at it. So we have, it's not just account managers, so we're based in the field, I'm based here. We have office-based equivalents that will deal with perhaps the smaller startups, pre-startups, people who are looking to set up businesses. We have links with the chamber, and they will perhaps field those a little or filter them before they then come to us. But we have businesses that we're engaging with. I've made headway with Holland & Barrett. They've been involved with Chris, and Chris introduced me to a contact there. I'm trying to expand our visibility there. They're very busy people, and in that kind of blue chip kind of corporate environment, they kind of know what they're doing. Why would they need the Growth Hub's help? But it's just being there and being on tap to businesses like that. We have medium-sized businesses. We've got one, Indigo Fitness. I don't know whether you've heard of it. They're an inward investment from Hinckley to Nuneaton, and have done extensive renovations on a property in Whittaker Road. And I would say mid-sized. They're really quite exciting business. Down to the smaller ones that have been helped by Gareth, who was here before, Joco Interiors, for example. So there's no discrimination between who we know.
And just to follow on from that, it's about the supply chain as well. You know, by having a Holland & Barrett, they suggested to us about, I think it was about their cleaning or something like that, and we said, sorry? That was it, yeah. So they're putting on a crash for employees, and we've suggested, why don't they talk to, I think it was based in Beta Road or something, you know, it's those little linkages that Gary knows has been on our patch, I know as working in the borough, that it's not just about talking to the very largest of the very smallest, it's about the supply chain, because they really can make a difference.
And like I say, we went to the 50th birthday of a shop on Queen's Road, and they're looking at setting an apprenticeship on, so that's starting now. So it doesn't matter how old they are.
I mean, I'm a new councillor, I haven't heard of you. It wasn't something you had on the interview, so quite June said it would be good if the other councillors who are new come and listen to you.
Yeah, it's all good information.
And I think just picking up on going back to that point about wherever, it doesn't matter where we meet the business on their journey. Once we've met them, we stay with them. And that list of engagements there, that's engagements that year. We're still maintaining contact with all the business that we did engage in previous years. So it's an ongoing process.
Keith?
Your major planning applications, the other thing we've got is lots of empty sites or sites that need a new end tenant. I know the new Indigo moved on to the old co-op distribution site.
Yeah.
So do you do much with sort of lists of land still? I know you used to have lists of sites available and try and do that sort of,
I mean, so I sent, after following the meeting with the Mayor last week, I sent all councillors an email regarding MBB Invest, which is our inward investment tool for showcasing businesses that may not have thought about the borough as a place of business, but actually it's about why you should live, work and visit the borough. But also there was another link on there regarding employment land sites that are run through Invest in Warwickshire, which is our partners in the county council who actually deal with the inward investment inquiries that we get and take them through that journey of they're looking at land, they can use the website and the expertise that they've got in the county council to showcase what land is available. That doesn't mean to say that we don't actively pursue our own inquiries of land as well, because it's our job to get more businesses and to grow the businesses, and when they are growing, for them to move on to the larger sites. So it's a very big and long process. We work very closely all the time to enable these businesses.
Yeah, I would recommend everybody has a look at them links that Chris sent out, because they are really good links. It gives you all the information that you need, really. Right, okay.
I just have one more
carry on,
point just in terms of opportunity. There's the City of Culture, Coventry won the City of Culture Games, which we all know. Also Birmingham won the Commonwealth Games. We're working with the City Council, the Command Authority, to make sure those opportunities are spread out across the whole region, that everybody in the region can benefit from this. It is a major opportunity, not just for Coventry or for Birmingham, it's a major opportunity for the West Midlands. And Warwickshire, so we're looking to actually make sure those opportunities start to play out. Equally, I mentioned in the previous discussion, I think 2 years ago, was the HS2 is happening. That presents opportunity, and the ripple effect of HS2 presents opportunity, I would argue, for every business right across the West Midlands. And so, that's we're seeing opportunities already starting to emerge, and those opportunities are available to businesses, and we're working on tools and systems that will enable people to see those opportunities much earlier. So you'll see announcements, hopefully, at the Business Festival that we're launching a variety of programmes to help them.
Right, okay, so 7:30 till 10 tomorrow.
Yep.
Ambleside, we've got lots of people coming.
Yep.
Might come down with bacon butter, is it? Right, okay. Thanks very much for your...
Thank you.
You want me to have this?
Thank you, buddy.
Might be worth linking in with some of the visits in the towns.
Sorry.
Might be worth linking in with some of the visits in the towns, because like businesses and all that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's. I mean, as you saw last week, it was.
Yeah, well, that's very well. Yeah, very well. Right then, forward plan, page 28. So, for those of you who do or don't know, this is things that are going forward and gives you the chance to have a look at anything that you might want to question, if you're allowed to question. Some of it's not for calling, but some of it is. But after doing the working group about scrutinies, it was decided to put the forward plan on because not everybody always sees the forward plan. So this gives you a chance to look at things and see what's going forward. You will see on there, there's not exactly a lot for us. So I've done all right out of that for him. So the next one on the agenda is 9, new scrutiny arrangement and work programme, page 32. So what we're being asked to consider, the purposes of this report is to inform the panel of new scrutiny arrangements following the departure of Head of Democratic Services. So what you've got there is how it's going to work in the future, and I suppose I'm asking you to put your thoughts forward. Has anyone got anything to say about it? Steve?
The two scrutiny panels are very unbalanced. The scrutiny meeting last week went on till 8 o'clock and could have had all sorts of extra discussions. So I think we do need to look at the balance of what's on what list. And one thing that struck me was we have the growth hub and things on R1, but all the third sector stuff is still with the internal scrutiny, even though they're external organisations. So I think that might be one that we could discuss if the other group was overloaded with stuff to do, is to actually take the community and voluntary sector actually to the external scrutiny, because that also ties in with scrutinising health and quite a few of the other external bodies.
Right, I have an answer for that, but anybody else got anything to say on anything? No. Right, okay. I did ask about that because I thought that maybe it should come here. Because it's funded by the council, it stays where it is, it stays on the internal. So the council gives the funding out, and that's the way, that's why it's on the internal. Okay.
Can I propose we ask that to be reviewed, because they are there's all sorts of bodies and all sorts of things to actually exclude us from scrutinising stuff that won't get a fair scrutiny, internal scrutiny. I think I would like to propose we ask the Cabinet if that can change, or whoever decides, because who decides on what scrutiny does? At county, a lot of councils, scrutiny decides what scrutiny does, not the administration deciding what scrutiny does.
But as I've just explained, that the voluntary sector gets funded by the council. So it's for the internal to look at how the voluntary sectors are performing, things like that, not for us.
But
We're here to look at the police, health, things like that. Mainly, as you well know, the health is going to take over a lot of our meetings, and quite rightly so. So that's where we are. Damon.
Keith, would you like to repeat your proposal?
I propose we ask whoever's decided to allocate which things go to which scrutiny to take the third sector into the external OSC.
I'll second that.
Right, let's vote.
Chair, I'm a bit confused about it. I thought that the agreement was reached in the full council meeting way back in February about exactly what the two overview and scrutiny committees would consist of. And there was one which was external affairs and one which was internal affairs. To me, anything therefore that is funded by this council goes onto the internal affairs programme. I just can't see how an external organisation can be looked at the other way round. Sorry, an internal organisation can be looked at by an external overview and scrutiny committee. I know there is a wish for things to change. I am well aware of that. But I just find it very difficult to understand how at this stage, very, very early in this stage of the game of the new overview and scrutiny arrangements, we can start swapping them around simply because someone thinks that they're incorrect.
Well, I'll give the explanation for it. I don't see as we can swap them around because that's
I don't see how we can move resolutions to do it, Chairman.
And we're an advisory body. We can't change things that were set by full council.
That was the previous full council, though, Chair. The council
We're still,
changed.
with the greatest respect, we're still working on the budget that was made in February with the old council.
But with respect,
everything
that was a budget decision.
We ain't having arguments here. Trish.
We should have
Trish.
arguments.
You're your friends, Keith, for him to support you.
Can I just make some comments on proposal? In the internal scrutiny last week, we had members of the public speaking on every single item, which did lengthen the meeting, and we haven't this week. So that may explain why that one went on a bit longer.
That also explains the imbalance. We've lasted an hour and a half.
Okay, if you're not going through the chair, just once really. John?
Chairman, we haven't even touched on health in this meeting.
No.
It is a huge issue. I was at a patients participation group on Monday evening, and one of the surprises was the departure of the chief executive, George Elliott, and the replacement of that by Glenn Burley, who is going to be running South Warwickshire Foundation Trust. He runs the Wye Valley Trust, and also now he will be running the George Elliott. Now, that's a pretty broad, long, it's 100 miles long and so on. It's a very big change for the George Elliott, and the fear is that what you will get is a hastening of the degrading of the George Elliott services to University Hospital. All sorts of fears creeping in again about the possible changes, and I do think this committee will be maybe key in picking up the issues and passing on important views about how health is going to develop. We haven't had on that committee a decent presentation of the Sustainable Transformation Plan, and we've yet to have that, after its new name of Better Care and so on, presented to us. And I just think there's a lot of things happening in health that simply aren't at this committee yet, which should be here.
Which is why I had a meeting earlier with Wendy and Kelly, and we've grouped some of the health things together for October, December. And so I'm hoping everybody's happy with them dates that's included in that, because they are grouped together. I'm not expecting them to be quick meetings because it's health. I know how health goes on. I'd rather concentrate on the things that this scrutiny can do. Trish?
Sorry, related to that, I wondered if we could add an item onto the external work programme, the changing places, toilets that we talked about previously. Could we add that on into the health item?
Onto the health. Yeah.
We pay for it, so it's internal information.
No, we haven't got any money to pay for it, so
Did Trish at any time say that we was going to pay for it? Because I didn't hear that. What is it you wanted?
What I'd like, there's been a first reading of the bill last week in Parliament, and I'd like perhaps to write to our 3 MPs to ask them to support the second reading of that bill, and then to look at possibly forming a working party to look at sources of funding and the implications of using 106 money as was suggested, and the cost and the potential locations into existing buildings or possibly new big buildings. So just to investigate possibility and feasibility.
Right, so got Keith's proposal, seconded by Damon. So that moves to a vote. So in favour. Can we do in favour first? In favour first. 1, 2, 3, 7. Against.
Only against it, Chair, because I don't think it's that we should even be making decisions on it.
So
keep looking at your friends, Keith. That was
Chair's casting vote loses. Wins. Loses.
Sorry,
Chair, that was not
1,
the
2,
correct
3, 4, 5, 6,
and 2
7. Yes, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and casting a vote.
No, you don't.
Cast a vote in the event of it's a tie.
You don't have the casting vote, Chair. The vote is 7 votes to 6.
Yeah. Okay, you can. Okay, send it. Or it'll come back as well. Just send it then. Send it as ask.
It's a recommendation.
Yeah, recommendation. Yeah.
Just a recommendation.
The other is looking through the external overview and scrutiny panel work programme. Is everybody happy with that work? Go on.
Gambling, it's something that has been floated around for as long as I've been elected. I know it's something you've got quite a keen interest in. What I don't want to see happen is yet another year go by when we're talking about everything else, which I also understand is important that is left for another year. Is there any possibility of having a bit of a firmer date on that, so we know that it can definitely come?
Right, okay, sorry.
I'm on the wrong page.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So I had a meeting earlier and we've come up with this. If we
Right,
can.
so there is a
so that is 6th of December.
Oh, that's fine.
Linked in with other health things.
Yeah.
So that's the discharge protocol.
Yeah, sorry.
No, teenage conception. So, yeah. So you'll have an health one in October and an health one in December, basically.
Yeah.
Anything else on this additional? Keith?
The only other thing related to all these is underage drinking, because we do, statistics out the last couple of days said that Nuneaton has the highest hospital admissions of under 18s, about 47.
That isn't on there. That isn't on there.
I know.
It doesn't say anything about underage drinking.
I know. It's a
So
suggestion.
have you got anything
That's
this?
in the cans.
It's in the cans,
Yeah.
right.
Right, so there's nothing else. Everybody's happy with the dates and everything that's set on this. Brilliant. Thank you. So that's gone through. Any other items? No? Okay, thank you very much for attending. Well, that's the end of it.